Hi everyone. The paper I'm going to present is Innovations and Practice of Continuous Auditing. So the main ideas about this paper is it defines how continuous auditing methodologies introduces innovations to practice in 7 dimensions and propose a 4-stage paradigm to advance future researches. In this paper, the 7 dimension about how continuous auditing improve advance the audit is like follows. First, about the frequencies. Actually, the auditing continuously or in real time seems not idle, but it can impact on the operation of the AI system and may not always cost effective. So auditors should perform their real-time continuous auditing in high-risk areas, while for the low-risk ones, it is sufficient to just audit in periodical or frequent circles. Well, the next is about the approaches. In the traditional auditing, the accounting information is audited in annual base, so the material errors or fraud can go undetected for months. While in contrast, the continuous auditing occurs on more frequent or continuous basis. So the continuous monitoring and the test of transactions allows the auditors to detect to actively detect and investigate exception. Well, for the procedures. Well, the third one
Go
is
ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. The third is about the procedures. Actually, the traditional audit is manual. It's manual audit. While for the continuous auditing, procedures are automated. But that doesn't mean we don't need the manual process in the continuous auditing. Some procedures that require complex judgment or professional skepticism still need to be manually performed by the auditor. Well, the first one is about the work and the roles of the auditors. Actually, the audit procedures used for transaction and compliance verification are automated in the continuous auditing. So auditors' main role is to present invoice in investigating irregularities and exceptions, and dealing with audit procedures requiring judgment and professional skepticism. So the implementation of the continuous auditing by the internal auditors should be idle because the internal auditors have large amount of data and the frequency of monitoring and testing required. So the roles of external auditors may eventually evolve to become an independent certification providers of the internal audit continuous auditing system. The first one is about the nature, realm, and the extent of the testing. In a traditional audit, the manual internal control and substantive detail testing are periodically performed, while the continuous auditing, the automated continuous control, monitoring, and continuous data assurance are used in this audit. So they are used for monitor violations and test the violations. The violations and anomalies, we call them audit exceptions. Well, for the time, in the traditional audit, the internal control test occurs in the planning stage, while the substantive detail test occurs in the field work stage of the audit. While in the continuous auditing, all these occur in the same time. As for the sampling, we do sampling in the traditional audit, but we test the whole population in continuous auditing. And the sixth about how the tests are doing. Traditionally, the tests are performed by humans, while in continuous auditing, we use the data modeling and data analytics to do this test. For example, we have the statistics, data mining or machine learning. For the reporting, the traditional auditing is periodical, while for the continuous auditing, is continuous or more frequent than the traditional one. The next is about the 4 stages of the continuous auditing. The first stage is auditors first they need to identify a business process error where the continuous auditing can be applied, and the data access should be the primary consideration. And then the auditors will examine pre-existing audit procedures to identify types of monitoring and tests that can be formalized. While in the stage 2, the data modeling is used to develop benchmarks for evaluating future transaction data and account balances. Benchmarks are created using the estimation, classification, association, or clustering techniques on the historical audited data. While in the stage 3, the data analytics are used to evaluate internal controls, transaction details, and account balance the benchmarks. All the violations will be flagged as exceptions and can be suspended in a real time. And for each of these exceptions, auditors will evaluate whether they further investigation needed or not. If the auditor suspected with the explanation, and they can just document these findings and the resolutions. While in the 4th stage, a continuous audit is an audit by exception. So if the continuous system does not produce any exception report, the underlying accounting information is deemed to be free from material errors or fraud. So a clear report, a clear audit opinions report can be issued. So that is 7 dimension and 4th stage of the continuous audit. Here is about the conclusion. In this paper, they also need a set of propositions concerning the environment of the future assurance. Here is some of the future research topics. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Just go over the future research topics.
The first is the continuous audit paradigm will progressively integrated and eventually replace the traditional audit. And the real-time continuous audit will occur in high-risk business process, and frequent audit will occur in other business process. In the continuous audit environment, information systems will have a lower frequency of errors occurring over a more limited set of sequential process. Standardization of data collection and formalization of internal policies is essential for audit automation. The auditor's role will evolve from perform audit to investigating irregularities or exceptions and dealing with audit procedure requiring judgment and professional skepticism. And in the continuous auditing paradigm, the external auditor's role may eventually evolve to become an independent certifier of internal auditors' continuous auditing system. And the consideration of the whole population or transactions in monitoring and testing can enhance the effectiveness of an audit and increase the probability that material error, omissions, or fraud may be detected. A dual-level analysis of transaction data and account balance will be used in the continuous auditing environment to help detect fraud or corruption by management. The initial application continuous auditing will occur in business process where there is no barrier to data access. That's it.
Thank you. The reason I ask you to read it is because this afternoon we are going to talk about big data and continuous auditing in the AIS survey seminar. And I'm going to ask you at the end to, as a homework, to do, there is this table 1 here, a traditional auditing versus continuous auditing methodology that I did with David Chen. And I'll ask a third column, instead of continuous auditing, one more column that I would call contemporary continuous auditing, and ask you to think a little bit about how is the audit the future really going to be, considering what has happened in technology recently.